Hello everyone again and welcome. So this is the second day of our open topics discussion at the Hibiscus PTG. Yesterday we had a lot of discussions when we covered all things FFS, DNS configuration for NetApp JSS mode, the NetApp AFX integration, eventlet removal, where we are and our plans for the upcoming cycle. Share migration, and we briefly chatted about migration of Manila client to SC, and I'm hoping we can get some time to get back to that today. All those discussions were recorded and they are already available in the OpenStack Manila YouTube channel. There's a playlist named Hibiscus PTG. So I think I linked here somewhere. No, I didn't yet, but I will. So OpenStack Manila YouTube channel, if you take a look at it, you see all of the discussions, recordings are all already there. So if you missed something, please check the Etherpad and the recordings and you see the whole discussions. Without further ado, I think we can get started with today's discussions by going through the Weka driver. So, and we have some Samsung engineers that have been helping us maintain Manila for a couple of cycles joining us. So would you like to get started with this?
Hi everyone. Thanks for joining. And today we'd like to share our experience integrating Weka with Manila. Actually, my colleague Soyun will uh, walking you through the details on the Etherpad. She lead this work on our side. After that, I will come back with proposal we'd like to discuss with the community. So please.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our work today. And my name is Soyun, and I'm a developer at Samsung SDS. I work on file storage and parallel file storage services within our internal cloud platform. I currently work with Hong and Sehun, who are also joined in this room. So today, I'd like to share our experience integrating Weka with OpenStack Manila. And this is not a complete solution or a formal proposal, but rather like something we implemented in our environment. So we hope to share what worked and what was challenging and where there may be like room for further discussion. So I begin. And so as you know, Manila provides a driver-based architecture to integrate various storage backends. This model works well for like traditional network-attached storage systems, where storage is exposed as shares over protocols like NFS or CIFS, and aligns naturally with Manila's shared abstraction. However, in our case, we needed to support a new service based on multi-node GPU clusters where high-performance shared storage was required. For this purpose, we adopted Weka, which is a parallel file system and which is designed for high throughput and low latency workloads. So while exploring the integration, we faced two key challenges. The first challenge was how to make Manila's shared abstraction to Weka's file system-based structure. Since Weka does not natively provide a share-oriented model, we needed an intermediate abstraction. And to address this, we introduced a logical unit that we refer to as a file set. This file set is not a native concept in Weka, but an abstraction we defined to bridge Manila's share model with Weka's file system structure. It represents a scoped portion within a file system and serves as a target for share operations. And the second challenge was how to handle Manila's share server model. So Weka introduces a concept called organization, which defines a clear boundary for managing resources. Because of this, we did not need the full life cycle of share server management that Manila typically supports. So in Manila, depending on the driver mode, share servers can involve provisioning and managing like Nova instances along with network configurations. In our case, we implemented a simplified version of this concept, which we refer to as a file set server. So this file server satisfies the required interface while avoiding additional infrastructure management. More importantly, it is mapped one-to-one with Weka's organization, so allowing us to align the control plane structure directly with Weka's resource model. So to address these challenges, we took a practical approach given our constraints. So instead of extending Manila directly, we used a Manila Helm chart and created a hard fork component, which our team internally called Mosaic. So Mosaic is based on Manila's control plane concepts, but adapted to better fit Weka's model. By introducing the file set abstraction and simplifying the share server into file set server, we were able to build a working integration that meets our requirements. However, our intention was not to diverge from Manila. Ideally, we would prefer to support Weka directly with Manila as a proper driver. Due to product delivery timelines, it was difficult for us to implement this with Manila in on a short period of time, and it led us to build Mosaic as a separate component. That said, while working on this, we noticed that similar types of storage systems have already been integrated into Manila. For example, IBM Spectrum Scale has been integrated through a Manila driver by mapping its internal file systems constructs into Manila's shared abstraction. This suggests that even file system-oriented storage systems can be adapted to fit within Manila's model with the right design. So based on this, we believe that integrating Weka into Manila in a similar way could be a feasible direction. So our team was wondering if there are contributors in the community who are familiar with Weka and interested in this area. We believe this could be a meaningful opportunity. And if there are not, and if time allows, our team would also be interested in contributing from our side. So we'd be happy to share more details from our implementation and discuss possible approaches together. So that's all from my side, and I would be happy to take any questions or feedback.
Gautam, please go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Suyun, and thanks, Anyong. I think it's a pretty cool thing. I've heard some rumblings from the OpenStack scientific SIG as well, in a quest to find share backend drivers that support this sort of high performance workloads and such. So I think this is a good um, inline thought, right? I agree that there might be some um, expectation mismatches because yes, when Manila was first created, it was for enterprise storage and traditional use cases, and then a lot more was built on top of it. Specifically, I wanted to add a couple of things. One is which is we were starting to go in this direction, which is why we introduced DHS as false. So which means that you don't really need to worry about the share server handling logic. It is probably more of a fit for enterprise use cases where you have multi-tenant workloads that need that hard security guarantees that DHSS true provides. And so if you didn't want to worry about that, or if you have an inflexible networking situation in your cloud, you would actually support and use DHSS false driver. So this sounds a lot like that. An example of that is this FFS driver. It is a DHSS false driver. It does not support share servers. And in terms of having a uh, you know other expectations, one of them I was going to ask you is, are you in using the native Weka FS protocol? Is that the thing that's currently being used by you guys?
Yes, so we are using native Weka protocol, and
Okay.
so inside the component that we created, we are calling a Weka API in there.
Okay, makes sense. So yeah, there's established patterns already to introduce something like that in Manila. So NFS SMB was the default, but because that's just what existed back then, or was more popular in the enterprise space back then. But I think, I mean, you see a wide gamut of other protocols that Manila supports. Because we started adding that because like this, which is FFS, Cluster FS, Map RFS, etc. So you could create a whole new protocol. You can call it whatever you want, really. But if I mean, if it's specific to Weka, it would probably be just called Weka FS um, in the Manila space. Is there anything else that you found that is not mapping in terms of? I mean, I get the file set concept. This is totally valid. This happens with other drivers too today. Like for example, FFS. What Manila was actually carving out was just subdirectories within a bigger file layout, a bigger file system. And so those subdirectories, they started building a whole user experience around that. So based on how Manila was designed, those subdirectories started getting more and more features. And today it's a first-class citizen in the Ceph API. So there is something known as a sub-volume, which is literally just a directory sitting on top of a file system with a lot of exadders capabilities and such that will allow you to that will allow you to do more file system metadata based control for that directory. So that probably is what you're chasing by saying that you're using file sets, right? Is there you know are there any limitations to that you found in comparison to what we're expecting from Manila?
So basically, the main one of the main reason that we created like another separate component was due to a timeline, since like we need a working solution within a limited product delivery schedule, and designing a proper driver that like cleanly maps Weka's model into Manila would require like more time for design and validation. And also like there are some complex models in Manila, such as like shared instances and snapshot instances. And there are like so many like database connections within like those two different tables, or like several different tables. So in order to like simplify the concept of the component, we try to get rid of like all of the instances notion, and we just use file set as share, and all of the instances mapping goes to into a file set. So what we tried to do was just like um, use Manila design pattern, but like get rid of complex design in order to like simplify the component so that we can meet the timeline and requirements in our company.
No, that's a good approach, and that's kind of where I mean, yes, you're right that this is complexity when you're not thinking about certain features that you're not that you're gonna that depend on those extra things that Manila is adding, right? So the whole share instances and snapshot instances for us comes because we think that when you're moving your share data from one place to another, so this is migration workflows, or when you're mapping the same share data in different places, basically replication workflows. That's where the share instances come into picture. But for the most part, most drivers, right, that don't support migration or replication natively, what they're doing is they're just mapping a share instance to the share. So 99% of your shares might just have one instance, and that is the share itself. And so the direction you took is the right one. And the only evolution that you will need is in case you're thinking about replication. Because even with migration, that the concept of the instance mapping is not something that the driver needs to worry about, because Manila handles that part. It creates two separate instances which look like two separate shares to the share backend. So we'd be happy to, like, help you with that complexity part. If this thing, I think one of the limitations that we have is that we've not documented the driver interface properly. And we started doing that at the end of last PTG, because we heard the same feedback that there are quite a lot of complicated concepts in there that a new driver author or driver maintainer may not be able to understand. We just haven't merged that yet. That's on me. I started a patch that's still sitting in review. So I can go back and improve that. But I'm interested in stuff like this. If you think that something is this is quite complicated for the backend that I'm trying to support. I'm interested to tune that in the documentation and make things clear. Uh, I think the other thing was, did you look at the minimum driver requirements in Manila? Uh, and this is documented in our contributor guide. I will have to find that. Yeah, Carlos is looking too. Yeah, it's down there, minimum. Have you folks looked at this document at all?
We haven't looked at it yet.
Okay. Yeah, take a look, because I think a lot of what I'm saying might actually just show up in that talk, and it might be
Yeah.
a good starting point um, on what's the minimum. And the reason that this is a minimum is because we have a ton of optional features, and we have a model where users and operators can discover these optional features and work through them. And the minimum feature set is something that we promise out of every share that gets created. So besides that, the others are just like, add-ons, and operators expose them because that they have drivers that support them and so on. Yeah, that's all I could think of, like giving you these pointers and walking through this. Oh yeah, actually, I had one last question, which was testing. How do you test your driver today? And I was looking up what this driver is. I mean, what Weka is. Uh, is this a I'm sorry, I might be messing it up. Is this free and open source, or is this licensed and sold by a vendor?
It's a licensed.
Okay. And so, what will happen if you do submit a driver to Manila? An integration to Manila would be that we would ask for a third party CI system that can actually test this. Um, and we do per commit testing with Manila, which means that any change that's coming into the Manila repo should probably be tested through that CI system. And the way everybody does this is with using upstream CI um, uh, resources. Like, I mean, not resources, I meant like the upstream CI software, because it tends to give you the most amount of flexibility, and capabilities when it comes to testing with Gerrit. So when somebody's writing a change, because this is a Gerrit change, I mean, our CI knows exactly what to do, how to layer changes and so on, and how to invoke tempest tests and so on. So that's also required for a driver that's added to the tree. So that last statement has a lot of weightage. So if you'd like to propose this driver to the tree, which means that you want to propose this and get it merged into Manila, get it maintained in Manila, this is the requirement. If you would like to have an out of tree driver, which means you're gonna just maintain it on a Git repository somewhere, or maybe just privately even, that's totally possible. The only problem that these out of tree drivers ever face is that we have a driver contract that we try very hard not to break, but it's so hard to implement something like that too, because the in-tree drivers, we kind of see the code, we kind of see what needs changes when we have to make a change to the driver interfaces. Outer tree drivers, we're blind, right? So if we end up breaking something, it's usually something in the driver interfaces or the expectations in that, as we keep making changes to Manila. So it becomes a catch up game that you'll have to keep looking at what the tree look is evolving like, and maintaining your out of tree drivers. um, so I mean, we have folks here in this community that basically submit their driver on Gerrit but don't want it merged, and they just are using that Gerrit patch to just kind of test their out of tree driver, and keep it up to date uh, that way. So there are a couple of directions to take. If you want to submit it in tree, these would be the requirements. If you're maintaining it out of tree, you'd have some more work. Um, does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, I totally see your point, and thank you for this like information.
Yeah. Yep. That's all I had. Maybe if you want to connect with the OpenStack scientific SIG, that's who also works on high performance workloads and so on. We can drop in a link to where they hang out.
Awesome. I think most questions I had were asked by got them already, which were the minimum requirements, if it's something proprietary, and how easy this could be tested on CI. So don't have any other questions myself. The folks would like to add something and or ask some questions to Suyan.
Actually, I have some question. I think our concept might be difficult to integrate into Manila. So, uh, as an alternative, what do you think about adding it as a new component to OpenStack?
Is it that, sorry, if I got the question correctly, is that as a new entire OpenStack project?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it can be feasible, yes. The only thing is there's also a process for that, for onboarding new projects into OpenStack, and I think the TC has documented that. So yeah, that would be the next place to look into if you'd like to bring this as a new project to OpenStack. So there are a couple of requirements from the TC as well. Uh, I will try to find the link here. I think that, no, it's not this one.
Yeah, it's a project creators guide. So I we can link out of there. So there is a couple of things that if you are proposing a new thing, it actually might be easier to start with as a Git repo that lives on top of on the open dev infrastructure, and then you make a proposal to to OpenStack governance, um, suggesting that you're adding a new project and so on. Um, so you'll see that spoken about over there, and there's a whole lot of documentation. I would just ask questions based on that doc, I think.
Yep. Is this the project creators guide you're referring to from? I think that's the one, right?
Yeah, so that's the one that I linked
Ah,
links to that.
thank you. I linked this
So
a
it's a
couple of.
good starting place then.
Awesome. Thanks for the link. I linked this to someone a couple of months ago, and yeah, it already looks a bit different. So, yeah, thanks, Adam.
Yeah. The questions over there would be around what is the applicability over there as far as an OpenStack service is concerned. I think I can even share with you that document. Um, one second. So they're talking. You're basically asking about what is the amount of I mean, like, what is the scope, what is the maturity, what is the API like, and so on. So let me try and find those docs for you and link it in this etherpad. um, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I could connect you with the wider TC around that. Or if you're on OFTC, which is the IRC network that we use, there's a channel called OpenStack TC. So that's a perfect place to just ask questions to.
Thanks for your sharing. And uh, I just wondered, do you think it would be better to register this as a new project or include it as a driver with Manila?
Yep, absolutely.
You mean better to register new project?
No, I think both approaches work. I think as part of Manila, you already can leverage from everything Manila, right? So there is already lots of things built. So if you have the testing and you can meet the requirements, then I think it's already a very nice thing. But yeah, not sure. Other folks have other takes on this, but it feels like a nice use case for me. So that's what I was mentioning. But also, I can
It,
see
it,
the use case for a project.
I think my opinion would be around like, what is it that you're trying to solve, right? What is the scope for this? Is it about provisioning and managing file systems for use cases in OpenStack and beyond? Then it makes sense as a driver to an existing storage project, such as Manila. But is it about something else? Like, maybe it extends beyond the provisioning of file systems, but it does more things. Maybe it runs some sort of workloads that you can initiate through APIs and so on. which can be which OpenStack users would benefit from. So the scope just increases from that layer, right? So that probably adds a new dimension, and so that's where I think new these projects would be useful. But what typically the TC does is if the scope fits an existing project, we try to kind of ask you to work within the confines of that, unless the scope is larger. So that's simply the case, and that's because of there's a lot that goes into defining a new OpenStack project. It defines a governance structure, a release structure, and then the CI CD that goes along with it, etc. So a lot's involved with dedicating resources for that. So which is why one of the primary things would be to understand what is the scope of this. What does it affect OpenStack in this different a way that it can't be subsumed by an existing project team, and that's the rationale there. And within this project, of course, we've tried to keep the minimum driver requirements so minimum that we should be able to have a wider set of drivers. But that itself is up to debate, right? So in case this Weka driver has some hard limitations that we can't work around, we can't support something that the minimum drivers requirements are suggesting. So maybe that's something that we should discuss. I mean, these driver requirements were written years ago. Technology changes. Maybe some of these things don't make sense now. So we evolve, right? So that's totally just normal evolution. So tell us, I think, by evaluating the requirements that you have in Manila, and if you see that any of this is inflexible, let us know and we can talk through that. Um, but that said, I think your proposal for a newer project it means that the scope is bigger than just file system provisioning and management. If it is truly bigger, then yeah, I think making a new project application is a good way to proceed.
Uh, okay, actually, we we have been implemented only just simple features like file management, snapshot management, and access rules. Uh, while more complex features have not yet been designed or developed. So thank you for your opinion and sharing document. We will take a look and we will touch you
Yeah,
sometime.
absolutely. Please do that. And I think one of the things that I don't know, I don't know what time during this PTG we'll talk about this, but we are, as a community, the OpenStack community, making some changes to um, you know, um, allow both humans and human-initiated AI workloads to consume and to actually help make OpenStack better. So which means change the way we do contributions, or rather make things better. Basically, it should encompass everything. There are lots of discussions everywhere, but one of the outcomes of that is going to be better documentation within these projects. So if you find us lacking, I mean, this is a good opportunity. It's a brand new driver that probably can point out all the wrong or missing docs for us, and we would actually backfill that gap, because it's part of the bigger mission we want to do across the community. So keep in touch, to let uh, we can chat over the IRC channel, email, or on the weekly meetings on IRC.
Yep.
Thanks.
Awesome. Any other questions? Right, taking silence as though. Yeah, really nice discussion. Thanks for bringing this up, Suyon and Hong. I do appreciate that, and yeah, let's keep in touch about that. Awesome. So yeah, I think that takes us to our next topic of today, which is the REST mode support gaps from Kumar. So Kumar, uh, around.
Thanks, Carlos.
Yep. Would you like to do the screen share,
Share
or
my
should I
screen.
do? Yep, sure. Let's go ahead.
Hope you were able to see my screen.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey everyone, myself Kumar from NetApp, and today's topic that I'm presenting here is uh, Manila driver that Manila NetApp driver that we support. Uh, that there are some REST gaps. So I'm trying to bring up the REST gaps that we had identified and walk through all the gaps that we had found. What needs to be done. So to give it just a background, right? So today the NetApp driver, OnTap driver in Manila will support two clients. So user can choose a Zappy mode, which is a legacy RPC client, and it's a proprietary protocol. And it also supports a REST client from newer OnTap versions. So the driver has evolved over the releases and with these two modes. So in the evolution process, there are some gaps that has been left out in REST. So what happened is we have there is a built up mechanism that had been done to do the some fallback mechanism if the REST mode doesn't had a particular REST API or a support for the particular uh, workflow that can be achieved through Zappy that has been that will fall back to that Zappy method. So it's been built initially because of the several reasons like REST gaps and also some time constraints that is there to make it catch up with the old implementation. So that now that the OnTap has evolved over the releases with all the most of the features being in, and also we have a kind of a mechanism that has been built in whatever the APIs that are there, and also if you have a CLI which is OnTap CLI, we could able to make a call to the OnTap CLI using a pass-through CLI APIs that also can be used. So it's a high time for us to bring this gap to down. So what happens now is because of this fallback mechanism, the driver is still dependent on the Zappy calls because the initialization will happen to create a Zappy client. So it's not purely a REST mode. So if someone wants to enable the REST mode and their storage doesn't have a OnTap Zappy enabled, right? So the driver may fail in the initialization phase because of the initial cost that it will make to create the Zapier client to get the versions and such. So we are not purely REST mode. We can say it will not operate. So there is a need to bridge this gap now. So coming to that, as part of the scope analysis that we had done over the in the code, 14 impacting gaps that were identified to make this Zapier to REST gap close. There are we had categorized as immediate and deferred. So immediate is something that can be solved now because of the different aspects like public API exists and gap is just in the code, not in the API, not available. And also there is a way that we can do with the private CLI, right? So those are immediate we categorize. And deferred is something that we had certain APIs, certain private CLIs that are being used, which is a pass-through API. But we OnTap implementation as a public API is not yet available. Those we had raised as a internal dependencies with the OnTap platform team. So though once that comes in, we will be replacing the private CLS with those things. So this doesn't stop us from claiming the or making removing the ZAPI fallback mechanism. This is what we will be targeting mostly to solve this as much as possible. So if we go to the gaps, I will try to summarize it. I will not take much time. So there is some gap in the SIP's code where default AD site feature has been added. At that time, it is being addressed only in the ZAPI, and this is actually a code gap. I should say it as a feature gap compared to ZAPI path. It's not like a something is falling back. So this we had identified, and a consistency group snapshots. So we had a CG start and CG commit ZAPIs, right? As ONTAP is now supporting CG as a first class object. Now we should be able to do the this snapshot thing using our public APIs itself. So this among all the things, this is a little complex thing. We have to carefully see the CG expand, CG delete, and we have to think about the little design aspect. Like here, it will create Zappy will create a temporary CG for us, and it will destroy it after taking the snapshot. Here, we have to do the similar thing, or we have to maintain the CG as internal object somewhere hidden in our private data of the object or something. We have to see that design aspect we are yet to see, but this is what the gap is there. And some cluster pairing we will validate at the time of the backup that there's a gap. We are just falling back to Zappy here, and Kerberos status check and SVM listing for the data SVMs, and some flags and some lift capacity details that we get. Here we don't have a public API, but to make our driver to be pure REST mode, we will be falling back to the private CLI so that first we can remove the fallback mechanism of the Zappy. And we had raised anyway the on tap ticket to bring it as a public. Once it comes, that will go. This will go inside as a deferred gap. So once these APIs also comes, coming to the deferred gaps, once these public APIs are private APIs are converted to a public API, then we will take it as a some BERT or something in the any of the releases, um, because they have to pick this prioritize and fix it and do the backporting to the on-tap versions, and what on-tap version is the minimum that we can support given that on-tap releases that had went in. All those things factors we will take it in the call, and we'll do the replacement or some branching something depending on the version. That strategy we are yet to make it more compatible with as much as on tap versions that we had, depending on our interoperability metrics. And below is the some of the details that I had kept it in the little detail way, on the high level approach that we are thinking on top of the mind for some of the things like this, and some things are very straightforward. You can go through and feel free to make a comment on that. Yeah, that's all from my side. If there are any questions, feel free to ask.
Hey, Kumar, thanks for the details, and thanks for digging through this, right? Like I think the last time we heard from NetApp folks around this was a few releases ago when the gaps identified were probably smaller. So I'm a little confused. Like it seems to have grown. Is that because of ONTAP releases? Like are there some API changes in the REST API as well that are affecting this?
No, see, there are two categories of gaps, Gautam. One is there are few fixes, few features that has been pushed without compelling that the rest has to be implemented, right?
Oh,
So
I see. So there are new
yeah,
features in Manila that were added without the REST support. Is that what?
without the rest support,
Oh,
so
I
some
see.
bug
Okay.
fixes like that, some enhancements that also has been factored in now. It's a kind of a holistical code level analysis has been done. That's why you are seeing all those gaps being listed out now. And also we whatever the new features that we had added, right, over the from the last few releases, that we are making sure that REST is being a part of the P0 item. So that's why we are not seeing any something new. These are all old code. If you ask me, like 3, 4, 5 years back, so 3, 4 years back at least, something like that.
And you said the private CLI stuff there is stuff currently in the driver that's executing CLI commands, correct?
Correct, correct.
Okay. All right. Something for us to remember because I don't know if you were there at the event-led discussion. Sorry, I don't know whether we brought it up in the event-led discussion this time, but been aware for a while that we have the SSH pooling mechanism in Manila, and that is not. I'm not sure that it's been scale tested. So if you are executing these private CLIs for any of these workflows, I'd be interested to know if it's using the SSH pool and if it's
No, no, no.
fine.
This is not SSHCLI, Gautam. This
Okay.
is going through as a REST API only, but the endpoint will be private CLI. ONTAP itself will expose a wrapper called a private
Oh,
CLI
I see. Okay.
execution wrapper. So end of the day, it's a REST API which will have all the HTTP methods that will be supporting. That's it.
Okay,
It's a kind
that
of
makes
endpoint.
sense.
That's it. Yeah.
All right. So in that case, then, like, my question changes to, like, do you have RBAC changes for these sort of things? Because I'm aware that NetApp documents how to create a user that's capable of using the DHSS true driver, the DHSS false driver,
Mm.
and not really rely on any pre-created roles for that purpose.
Mm.
So does your analysis actually show that there's any RBAC changes and things?
Yeah. Right now, if I remember correctly, the private CLI will uses the cluster credentials only to execute, but I will make a check on that. But RBAC will be similar for what ONTAP commands will be for when you're creating a role for SVM, giving a privileges to the SVM, right? That will be similar. We will not be having something different, but I will make a double check on that about it.
Yeah,
We
specifically
already have,
around.
yeah,
Yeah.
we
Good.
already have a certain private CLIs already being used in our code base from few years back itself. It's being there, lying there.
Yeah. Yeah,
We
the
haven't
ask
faced.
would be to confirm that with anything new that you're adding as well, given that
Mm,
I think we've seen very protracted results of it. Like, it'll show up as a bug report for us, which we're like, huh, that doesn't make sense because we've been testing this,
mm,
right? I mean, it could be working fine with the NetApp CI, but then I think we go down the road and realize the NetApp CLI is actually using a more privileged user,
mm,
and so some feature had some really bad outcome out of it because of it.
mm.
So my philosophy there would be to try to test with the absolute minimum that you're recommending, and that itself might show you the gaps.
Yep. So on that front, right? I would I would I would think that if we can test it with the HSS true for whatever the private sales that will be using those workflows, which comes with a minimum C privileges or back privileges, right? So that
You
would
mean
get
DHS
us in
false?
DHS true because we
Oh,
create SVM, right, for that.
correct. So no, I meant like the minimum privileges used by the driver. So technically, the
Okay.
driver NetApp login or something, right? So that's the username, and that's and whatever role is assigned to that. That is
Okay.
what is typically causing some issues.
Okay. So direct SVM based credentials, we need to say.
I'm not sure it's SVM based credentials, but I think NetApp documents some sort of credentials that need to be used by that user.
Okay. 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 I will take a look. I understand that we can create a user for a cluster. That cluster, that user can have the different RBAC these things. Yeah, yeah, we'll verify that. I got the point, but
Yeah.
Yeah, Girish, I think had a
Yeah,
response.
yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I just want to add here actually. So we have the two workflow, right? DHIS true and DHIS false. I think Gautam question, I think regarding for the SVM scoping actually, where we will create the user and then we assign the particular role for that user, or even for the cluster scoping also we can create the custom user as and we assign the role for that one. So custom cluster scoping, I don't think we have any issue. In SVM scoping, I think we should support only for the DHS is false actually, because DHS is true. We are creating the V server on the fly. So means you can't create means you can't create the user and role for those one, right? Because in DHS is false, everything is pre-created where user can go and create the user and give the role to that user so they can execute the few API and few workflow for the end user. So this SVM scoping, I think it will not support for the DHIS2. I think we need to support only for DHIS false. So that is my
Yeah.
understanding.
No, that's correct. And
that's
I
correct.
think with DHS true is a very similar case, but the problem is, I mean, like I think I don't remember if this is true anymore, but the NetApp CI used to be running with admin, right? And admin can do a lot more than a user that is scoped out with specific permissions and so on. So I think that's where a lot of the bugs were missed. Because the bugs
Right,
were, oh, you need to create a cluster user, but a cluster user also cannot have access to a particular command directory. And
right,
so
right.
that was probably just a bad miss when we were designing the feature in the first place. So we should have used a different API, or have. I mean, my other point over there is have graceful fallbacks around this. So if you can't do something, you should know well in advance, or you should roll back enough that you don't leave something in a bad state. That requires administrators to worry about it.
So let's say
Right,
in
right.
this,
Uh,
so in sorry, sorry, Grishma's question.
yeah,
In
sure.
this, right? So if we had identified any of the ORBAC roles that has to be added for these private CLIs, right? That can be documented, right? As part of our
Correct.
this
Yeah.
thing, right?
So
That
you
would solve
document
the
it.
problem, right?
Yeah, exactly. You document it, and I would recommend also using that same thing in your CI
Okay,
rather
got it.
than the pre-canned roles.
Pre-canned
So
admin user, default
exactly,
user, yeah.
yeah. So that you know that the next time you're adding something, it's missing, or it's doing the
Breaking
wrong
or
thing.
something. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
got it. Yeah, Girish, sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, just yeah, means documentation point. Yeah, actually, I think we will be planning to add means what is the role required for the particular SBM user or cluster user to executing some particular workflow, because that is quite old document I think, and after that we have added a lot of workflow, and for that workflow actually we have not added the what are the required role need to add for the user. So probably we'll add our documentation, means we'll update our documentation for that also. That is also in pipeline for us. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, makes sense. I think, I mean, this whole proposal makes sense to me. So it feels like you were planning from the get-go to kind of remove the Zappy implementation, and also to try to remove that operator flag that you have today that basically forces REST or Zappy. Um, so I think it's proceeding in that direction, right? Or
Yeah,
is there any
Zappy will
change?
be there, Gautam. Zappy will be there. If someone wants to use the Zappy for the features that are being supported in Zappy, that will be there. But the fallback mechanism is what we want to get removed from REST to Zappy, because
Okay,
Zappy is a kind of a superset now. Sorry, REST is a superset now. Zappy is a subset because the new features they haven't extended to Zappy. It's only on the REST, right? So that's what we are heading towards. That if something needs to be supported in Zappy, so on the Zappy we will have a REST enforcement being enabled for those workflows. So from Zappy, we will be anyway calling the REST if the new features are being
correct.
executed.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
I feel like as a maintainer or reviewer, I'm starting to get confused because of
Okay.
this, the number of options that are there. So definitely, I mean, it is a sort of thing that will take some time for you to have. But as a preference from somebody that maintains, you know, the code base kind of thing, like if I were to look at reviews and things like that, what I would want to see is one thing. So if NetApp prefers REST in its thing, that's the only thing you should support, and the operator should not like need to change anything. It just works, right? So if you're heading towards that direction, you have my support, is what I'm saying. Go ahead, Sai.
Yeah, yeah, I mean that's the future direction I see. OnTap did not, discontinue Zapier. That's the reason we are keeping. But in the future, right, there will be a news, and in the future, all the features will be only supported for REST, and in from that releases, we can only have this kind of stuff like you asked. But in the
No, that
past
is not
releases,
being.
will
Wait. That's not being confirmed. We don't know
yeah, yeah,
where it
that's
is
what.
heading. Like,
If on tap, that's what I mentioned. If only on tap discontinues, we can talk that. But yeah, for present we will have both. But maybe future, like Gautam asked, even we will be happy if it's pure rest for the customers.
Yeah, exactly, because you as a maintainer is having the same pain that I'm thinking.
True.
And the other part is, I I don't think. I mean, very often we make the mistake of thinking that we need to expose some knobs to an administrator or an operator. But it doesn't really need to be that way. What it's doing is actually making the service a lot more complicated to manage, because you're outsourcing the decision to somebody else, saying, "Do you want Zappy or do you want REST?" Um, so it feels like it's something that you as the driver maintainer needs to a call that you need to make rather than the operator.
Right.
That's my
We get it.
simple view on this.
yeah. See, one sticky point that we're holding is most of the customers, right? Some of the customers, there is a good chunk of customers still on the Zappy. They're
Right.
still using the old OnTap versions, and Zappy only works for them for all the features what they want. So once that customer base has moved to the latest OnTap, they're in a better position to discard that Zappy, ideally.
Yes, exactly. Right. Come on. Okay.
Some any other thoughts on this discussion?
One last thing, is the CI working on this REST stuff? I know you guys were fixing some bugs. Has your CI started testing REST as well?
Yeah, REST is already running as part of the NetApp CI, right? Sai
So,
confirm?
do we have Manideep on the call? Manideep, anything there? I mean, I'm just checking one of the latest thing.
Yeah. So actually, temporarily CA is down because of the hardware issue, but rest on DHS True was running, and
Right.
then it will be back soon.
Yeah, we have a CI mechanism for REST, right? That's what Gautam is asking.
Yes, yes.
It's not about the status. Actually, he's asking whether it will be a voting criteria for the gate that we enable REST component also.
I don't remember if it's voting or non-voting, but
Okay.
that is enabled.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we've disabled voting for third-party CIs in general, because there was a lot of noise because of infrastructure failures, etc. So it only comments right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, as long as it's running, because when folks are submitting bug fixes, etc., that's the place we go to see. Otherwise, we're ending up copying a bunch of you folks to validate.
Sure.
Yep. Right. Any other questions? Thoughts? All
Yeah,
right.
it's a good call out on line 169. That private CLI stuff requires a pretty high level permission to run. That's the sort of thing I think is good feedback to the OnTap team, saying that there there's real use cases here, and inflexible features that we've built on top of it. So that needs a priority, right?
Yeah, Gautam. Yeah, sure.
Awesome. All right. So we went a bit over in the discussion, but yeah, it was great. Thanks for bringing this up, Kumar. It's really nice. I think, yeah, you've shared the path forward, and yeah, some you have some requests, as for example the one on line 169. So thanks everyone. I think we can move to the next topics. We had a 5-minute break scheduled, but we are actually a bit behind on the schedule. So the folks feel we can continue, or would you like to take a break? Yeah, I don't want to put you on that, like it's going to be 1 hour and a half or more in discussions. But yeah, what do you feel like? Do you need a break?
I think the next topic we've discussed in a bit. We've discussed a little bit. I think I'm more interested in the health checks aspect from Francesco, that has a lot of opinions because of um, the way we've done operations in the last couple of releases. So I feel like I can reduce my topic to fit that. So break is fine.
Yeah,
Is short answer.
awesome. Thank you. Right, let's take a 5-minute break then, and then we'll regroup in 5 minutes.